Don't you just hate it when you find this dish that you can't wait to make, but then you look at the recipe and it's all in US customary units? So today I'm going to show you some quick steps we can take using the Bitrix 6-part chart that will help make these conversions a lot easier. All right, so here's what we're going to be converting today. This is a recipe created by Mr. You Suck at Cooking. Please make sure that you go over to his channel, but we're going to be using his video and his recipe as an example for us today. So we're going to start out with the smallest value of teaspoons and tablespoons. In the fluid ounce for the US customary system, we have teaspoons and tablespoons that are all within 1 ounce. And we're going to give you equivalencies for that right now. So over here we have 1 dot or 1 small rectangle. These both represent 1 milliliter. Then we also have 1 teaspoon. Inside of every teaspoon, and this is an approximation, but inside of every teaspoon, there is 5 milliliters. All right. So inside of 2 teaspoons, there will be 10 milliliters. Okay. And a tablespoon is made up of 3 teaspoons. And you can see that clearly here. 1, 2, 3 teaspoons. And again, we know that every teaspoon has 5 milliliters inside of it. So we know that this is 5, 10, 15 milliliters inside of 1 tablespoon. Okay. So what we can do is we can look up here and say, hey, we have half a teaspoon of baking powder. We'll go down to a teaspoon. We know that 1 teaspoon is 5 milliliters. So half of a teaspoon would be 2.5 milliliters. It's just that simple. So again, if you ever come across a recipe where it calls for, 2 tablespoons of honey, right? We can look over here to tablespoons. We know that a tablespoon is made up of 3 teaspoons. So that would be 5, 10, 15 milliliters. And if we need 2 of them, that means that 2 tablespoons will equal 30 milliliters. And again, this is an approximation. When you use these units, make sure that you use them consistently throughout your whole cooking process so that the measurements can be appropriate. But this is how you would convert 2 tablespoons into its metric equivalent. Inside of the US customary system, I'm sure you've heard of cups before. Cups are made up of ounces. So we can continue to build up into cups using this ounce group right here. And if we count it out, we can say that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teaspoons inside of 1 ounce. All right. And if every teaspoon has 5 milliliters inside of it, then that means that to find out how many milliliters are in an ounce, it's very simple. All we need to do is multiply the amount of teaspoons, which is 6, times 5, which gives us 30 milliliters. And we can also see that that's the same as 2 tablespoons. So this chart just makes it very easy for you to see how the values are organized and how they fall within each other. It might take a little getting used to, but this is how the system works and how it can be a helpful tool when working in the kitchen trying to make these values. The US customary system is very unique. Almost all of the cooking is done in volumetric values. So it's always broken down into fluid cups, or even when you're measuring dry ingredients. Sometimes you'll even, if you're making a fruit salad, the recipe might call for 3 cups of fruit. Even though it's a dry measure, even though you can measure it in grams or in terms of pounds and ounces, like how the rest of the world does with metric, in the US customary system, you'll most likely be seeing tablespoons, teaspoons, cups in those volume measurements and not inside of weight. So that's something very important to consider. So the reason why we're set up that way is because this system was being used hundreds of years ago, where electric scales or scales in general just were not as readily accessible as they are today. So instead of trying to measure out an exact amount of, flour or of a type of fruit, we had to use what was available, and what was available were just standard sized cups, like 1 cup, 2 cups, so on and so forth. It was easier for everyone to have those volumetric measuring systems and measuring units instead of dealing based off of weight. It was just way more convenient back then. And that just was used consistently over time. And it was ingrained into the culture of America. So that's why we still use volume over weight, even though it might seem more efficient today. And then if we go on, 1/8 of a cup. So let's try that out. As we went over a little bit earlier, there are a total of 8 ounces in a cup. Okay. So 1/8 of a cup would be 1 ounce. And again, we can just look at the chart and see, okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teaspoons. And this makes up 1/8 of a cup. All right. 1/8 of a cup. And then we can just do some basic multiplication. We have 6 teaspoons. And each of them have 5 milliliters, which means that they are 30 milliliters. So again, we can come over here, 1/8 of a cup, and convert that. We can see that it's 30 milliliters, approximately. Again, this isn't 100% exact, but this will get you close enough for your cooking so that you're only off by like a couple crumbs or a few drops. All right, so now we need to figure out how many milliliters are inside of 1¼ cups of all-purpose flour. Again, in the metric system, you would typically just measure this in grams, but as I explained earlier, the United States use a different system. When cooking, we measure most of our values in volumes, not in weight. So we're going to convert this into milliliters. So we know inside of the US customary system, there are 8 ounces and 1 cup. Okay, pretty simple. And again, earlier, if we look over here at our fluid ounce chart, we can see that there are 5 milliliters in a teaspoon. And then there are 6 teaspoons inside of an ounce. So that tells us that 1 ounce is equal to 30 milliliters. Okay, let's write that over here. 1 ounce is equal to 30 milliliters. And now you can just do some basic multiplication. If we have 8 ounces to get 1 cup, then we just need to multiply 30 by 8, which gives us, if we multiply this by 8, this gives us 240 milliliters. So now we know 8 ounces equals 240 milliliters. Now you might be wondering, then how do we get this 1/4? Again, it can be just as simple. What's 1/4 of 8? That would be 2. So 2 ounces equal how many milliliters? Well, we know that instead of every ounce are 30 milliliters. So that means that we can just multiply 30 by 2, which would give us 60 milliliters. So then you can add both sides of this equation up. So 1¼ cups are the same as 10 ounces, 10 fluid ounces. Then their metric equivalents of 240 milliliters and 60 milliliters would then give us 300 milliliters. All right. So now we can see that our value of 1¼ cups is 10 ounces, and 10 ounces is the same as 300 milliliters. So make sure to keep this chart out. Go watch our other video on how to draw out this fluid ounce chart so that you can use it and post it up in your kitchen for future use or for whatever project you have. But that's a simple and basic way of breaking of these conversions and simplifying them for equivalencies so that you can get this cooking done. And hopefully this is a lot easier than what you would traditionally use.